Hello and welcome to the Republic TV approval ratings. There are elections in our country, and that's when, of course, political parties seek their approval. But things should not stop with elections alone. At a regular basis, each government, regardless of the size of the mandate or how well it is doing politically, must be put to public scrutiny on several different issues. When people vote, they don't vote on one issue. They vote on their feelings towards a political party, in power or out of power. And sometimes the sentiments of people and how they react to political parties and governance is based on different issues. Hence it is important that in a democracy, we put particularly the ruling party in the dock at regular intervals so that we can get a sense of their performance on economy, foreign policy, social issues, social harmony, etc. So an over-dependence on one issue does not distract attention from the other. This episode of the approval ratings deals with the issue of strategy and foreign policy. And I'm delighted to have a fantastic panel with me. First of all, I'd like to welcome Yashwant Deshmukh. Yashwant Deshmukh has been working together with me as an editorial partner for a long time. He's the managing director and chief editor of Sea Voter. Over the years, Yashwant has made a mark for himself as a psephologist who does number crunching and analysis not just in India, but across various continents from North America to Africa. Yashwant, it's good to be with you again.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this one. And representing the government side, the ruling party, in this episode of the approval ratings, which is very timely indeed, Yashwant, because it comes at 3 years of the Narendra Modi government, the 60% mark, is Meenakshi Lekhi. Meenakshi Lekhi is a well-known spokesperson and member of parliament in the Lok Sabha. Meenakshi, it's a pleasure and thanks for coming. Meenakshi, thank you very much. Thank you. And with us also a great panel, and I'm some old comrades in the TV studios, Mr. G Parthasarathy, one of the most distinguished diplomats the country has produced. And to his right is someone I deeply respect. So often we disagree, but I have tremendous regard for this gentleman, K.C. Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Pushpesh Pant, International Affairs expert, is with us today. And I'm delighted to have with me in the studio for the first time on a show I'm hosting, Dr. Sriram Cholia. He's Dean of International Affairs at the Jindal University, and he's a contributor to Republic TV on issues of international affairs and strategy. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, do I have your permission to begin, sir? And I'd like to start at this stage by putting out the first set of approval ratings. Before we go into the issue of foreign policy, I, along with Yashwant, would like to show you the overall approval ratings of the Narendra Modi government. So if I can have your attention on the big screen, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the overall approval ratings of the Narendra Modi government, which we've been talking about. The first question is, has the Narendra Modi government lived up to your expectations?
52% saying yes. That's more than a majority.
Is that a reasonable number?
That should be called a reasonable number, but when you compare it to the personal ratings of the Prime Minister, then you will see there is a certain gap between what the popularity of the government is and what the popularity of the Prime Minister is.
Because your question is very well phrased. You say, has the government lived up to your expectations? So expectations are always high, and therefore this number would be tempered down a bit. It does not mean would you vote for a political party.
Yeah.
The second question is, who has been a better Prime Minister? Compared to Manmohan Singh, of course, Narendra Modi is streets ahead. What's the number here?
The numbers are way ahead. I mean, it's a kind of a lopsided affair. 79% saying that Narendra Modi is far better as a Prime Minister than when compared to the previous Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. I mean, there's it's lopsided. I mean,
of course.
Yeah.
What, according to you, is the biggest achievement of the Narendra Modi government? And here, interestingly, it's not Make for India, it's not Swachh Bharat, it's not even improving relations with foreign countries or the visibility or controlling corruption. On the contrary, it is demonetization.
41%. And this number collaborates very perfectly with the sentiment that another question says that we asked if the trouble during the demonetization that you faced was actually worth the fight against the corruption, against the black money. More than 80% of the Indians said, yes, it was absolutely worth it. They were troubled by it, they had many issues with it, but they supported the government's initiative all the way. And this number has not gone down, even from the 12 weeks.
That's one area where between December and at least, I would say, February, March, the media got it completely wrong. One area where the government has let you down, of course, the numbers are in their 20s, but 23% of people feel that the government should do much more to rein in the fringe elements.
That is almost about every fourth Indian saying that the top of the mind recall, that one thing where you feel the government has let you down is controlling the fringe element, which majority of the Indians, by the way, say that they are taking the focus away from the original development plan for which this government was mandated.
But viewers, if you were to look at any government, 60% into its term, and now 2 years away from the next general election, I don't think we've had a government in the past where at this point of time, if you compare the working of this government to the previous one, which is our next question, which says regardless of your rating for the Modi government, how do you compare it to the Congress government? Do you think it's better? And in that, I think there's a whopping 81% people who 3 years into the Modi government, on a relative scale, compare it much better to the Congress government. This has a direct political impact.
Interesting factor over here is that when we run the cross steps on understanding what the political background of the respondent is, even majority of the people who are not Modi supporters, majority of the people who never voted for BJP and who also say they are not going to vote for Modi, even they concede this government so far has performed much better than the previous one.
I'm just laying it out, but I would also like to caution here, Yashwant, that we do not believe that today's discussion on foreign policy need to be tempered because of popularity and perception. Foreign policy is a serious subject. It's important for the Modi government. I feel it will be used tactically in the run-up to the elections. Last question is, if India goes to the elections, who is your choice for Prime Minister? And Yashwant, you'd like to clarify here that we did not give any names in this.
Yeah,
we didn't give a choice of Modi, Rahul Gandhi.
It's an open-ended question where the verbatim answers come. And mind you, this is not just coming from this week's survey. We do a tracker which is week after week after week, and in the last 1 year, one calendar year, we have more than 100,000 respondents answering this question. More than 100,000 across each and every of 543 Lok Sabha seats. So this is interesting.
I think
this is unaided. This is top of the mind recall, and the numbers are 80% saying that if India goes to the elections as on today, their top choice to be the Prime Minister would be Narendra Modi. Never before, I don't think that I've worked in so many countries as well. I know the data, my data very well enough. This kind of incredible rating gives you a kind of confidence to further push with the mandate that you are giving. But at the same time, the expectation and the risk that this kind of support that comes
on foreign policy, huge. We now want to start our debate with the first basic question was asked: has the NDA government's foreign policy been better than the UPA? On this, the number is on your screen, and despite the nuke vote, despite all the efforts of Manmohan Singh government, the general belief, and I think this is dictated more by the aggressive policy vis-a-vis Pakistan, though we open this up to debate, 80% of respondents.
And just to underline this,
80% of respondents feel that the NDA government's foreign policy is better than that of the UPA.
And to underline this thing, that in the first 2 years, when we were running this tracker, the numbers on the top of the mind recall of the biggest achievement of the NDA government was actually on foreign policy in the first 2 years, that they have been successful in making India's relations with many other countries much better. Now, so that was the top of the mind recall. This year, demonetization has taken over, but yes, for full 2 years, this particular aspect on top of the mind recall.
So I want to begin the discussion first by getting, Meenakshi Lekhi's first set of responses, and then I think we'll throw it open to the experts. Meenakshi Lekhi, first your overall response to the numbers that you've seen.
See, numbers are speaking about what the policy is, and I can single-handedly give credit to the Prime Minister. Someone who visited 18 countries in 55 days, and every visit brought something to the country. And so if you look at the monetary aspect of the deals, if you look at the diplomatic aspects, if you look at what India has had to gain, it's all calculable. You can calculate the whole thing and put it across in numbers, in deals. And deal is a wrong word. Of course, Mr. Trump uses it very often. But if that is the word which needs to be used, we've done fairly well.
Let's hear it from the experts here. Responses. Gentlemen, Mr. Parthasarathy, let me start with you.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, there is a coherent foreign policy now.
Yes.
And it is driven primarily by Prime Minister Modi. That's what the world thinks.
Yes.
I think in our Indian Ocean neighborhood, extending across the Indian Ocean, especially on the western side, the Gulf. India, under him, have developed equally good relations with all major powers, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel and Egypt. And he's the first Prime Minister going with no inhibitions to Israel.
First week of July, I think.
Yes, and so I think as I look at it in terms of this overarching thing, in our extended neighborhood, a superb job.
Yeah.
You asked about Pakistan. Would you like me to focus on it just now?
Yes, but I wanted a broader sense because at this stage, maybe we just go with broader response.
What has accompanied this is a very clear economic policy and directions on which way the ministries should be moving. And foreign investment has gone up. The general investment climate is better. That is a sign of confidence in India. And I think, yes, you can argue that some things could have been done better, but even regionally in South Asia, I'm glad at long last he's come to the conclusion that SAARC is a waste of time. And he has brought in new organizations, the BBIN, all our east, BIMSTEC on our east. So in effect, we have bypassed Pakistan. I would not use the word ignored Pakistan, but bypassed Pakistan and not allowed it to be a factor in regional peace and cooperation.
At the same time, I always...
But one last point,
go ahead.
The challenge today is an axis and alliance between China and Pakistan, not just Pakistan.
No, I agree with you. And KC Singh, 80% of the population believes the foreign policies of the India government have been better than that of UPA. My own view is that a lot of this has to do with the recent aggressive postures that we've taken vis-a-vis Pakistan and the global outreach of the Prime Minister. I mean, can I also get a comment in from you? Prime Minister makes 56 foreign trips. He was criticized for it in his year one. Looking back at the third year, how do you look back on his personal contribution?
Look, essentially he picked up the themes which were there in Vajpayee's foreign policy, in Manmohan Singh's foreign policy, is the foreign policy as tweaked by Narasimha Rao after the Cold War. That has been continued by 3 prime ministers before him.
Yes.
But what he brought in was a new energy, a new personalized diplomacy, outreach to the diaspora, which was like a pop star sort of going out.
Absolutely.
So the style was different. But the basic themes were US, approaching the US and using that as an ally, short of an alliance. China continuing the same policy of engagement, putting aside your disputes, but making sure that China is contained, it does not come into your neighborhood. Neighborhood policy is essentially the old one, that you reach out to all the neighbors, make sure China doesn't intrude too much, make sure Pakistan doesn't become more of a mischief. And finally, looking to the east, it's Narasimha Rao who coined look east. Mr. Modi said act east. So which means he made it a more active policy. But I think what has happened...
He's only taken it forward.
But what has happened in the last 2-3 months is that we are at multiple inflection points. Much of the work that he's put in will have to be redone now. You got Trump. You cannot assume that US fully believes in India being built up as a rival to China or to contain China, because Trump has gone and done a deal with China using Henry Kissinger. Chinese have very cleverly opened up their market. They've said we'll come and invest in America. So there's a transactional relationship there where we cannot assume the kind of support we've had from 2 or 3 past US presidents. China itself has become more aggressive. The old approach that we could engage them, open our markets, and they will not cross certain red lines. Mr. Modi realized that despite his personal outreach, China was not looking for cooperation. They're looking for hegemony. It did not work. In fact, they embarrassed him even while President Xi was here by the movements on the border. And Pakistan, I think...
But that was at the start of his prime minister.
No, but it's the same. It's worse. Now, one belt, one road. You see how they've enveloped it around you to the extent that they're passing it through Gilgit-Baltistan, questioning sovereignty, and carrying a hoot.
So what you're saying, and I want Meenakshi to respond to this.
One last point.
Okay,
one last point.
Please go ahead.
That where Pakistan is concerned, I think the assumption in the government has been that we managed to isolate them. Their economy is cracking up. It's an isolated government. I think the Pakistanis have got tremendous support from China. In Riyadh, they've gone in the middle of a Sunni coalition which has re-emerged. And Iran is being seen as a bad boy. So to our west, we'll have to redo our sums in terms of alliances, whom we deal with. In a sense, Mr. Modi would be restarting on a number of these points.
Well, I think what you're providing is a fairly extensive critique where while you're saying that he's made some steps, you're saying it's too early to start counting
because
the
the
chickens in this
geopolitical
case.
plates have shifted.
And there Meenakshi wanted to come in, I think, a response to you. Meenakshi, you can go in here. There is a point he's made here. See, we are pushing Pakistan to a point, but the situation changes with the China-Pakistan economic corridor coming in. Chinese interests begin to get affected out there. He makes the point on Trump. How stable is the relationship? How dependable is the relationship with Trump? And he also makes the point, which he hasn't made the point yet, on Russia. What exactly is our equation with Russia?
Yeah.
Are they on our side, or which side are they on?
And Prime Minister is just going there for a bilateral.
So what essentially, Meenakshi Lekhi, the critique being presented is this, that while we have done a lot with Japan, China, US, we've been transformative, there's been personal attention, there's been a fair amount of pugilism in the relationship with Pakistan, which is good. I am a great supporter of it. It doesn't mean, this public percentage of 80% does not mean the effectiveness of the foreign policy. No. That's the point that he's making. Am I putting words in your mouth, KC Singh?
No, in the sense that it's not entirely you who decides the foreign policy.
So
others also take countermeasures.
Meenakshi Lekhi, a little sobering element he brought into the numbers.
Which is absolutely fine. I was on the first part of Mr. Singh's statement that UPA, whatever UPA policy was, has been carried over by
I also said Vajpayee.
Okay, Vajpayee also.
Yeah.
In terms, like you said, that this has been the policy of UPA, then Vajpayee, and then it's just been taken forward. My point is slightly different. I would say that is completely incorrect assumption on the ground that nobody visited Australia for I don't know how many years. One of the major economies of the world. Quite a big economy.
Yes.
Nobody chose to, even Canada. We've had one visit which was not an exclusive visit by Manmohan Singh, and not really much achieved. Seychelles and so many, and even to Sri Lanka after Rajiv Gandhi, and Mr. Singh has a huge contribution when it comes to Sri Lankan, and Mr. Parthasarathy knows it very well. So after all that achievement that the then bureaucracy made, what happened after Rajiv Gandhi? Not a single Prime Minister ever visited Sri Lanka. Now in all those terms, I think this government has been very different.
She's not wrong.
And the Prime Minister has not just taken the policy forward, but has put India in the center of the world, that look, we will interact and we will interact.
I think your point is well understood, because the Prime Minister has proactively made visits to regional partners. He's gone to Bhutan.
He's gone
to Nepal. He's gone to Afghanistan.
Sri Lanka.
And you've garnered support regionally after incidents like Uri, and the entire SARC membership stood out. I think that was a standout moment when the whole SARC members pulled out of the summit, which was to be held in Islamabad last year.
No, CPA also we pulled out.
I think, but what is being said here, I mean, let Pushpesh come in actually. What is being said here is, one is the symbolism, first steps forward, great initiative, visit, like the upcoming visit to Israel. I agree with you, KC. That's a historic visit, the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that an Indian Prime Minister will be visiting Israel. And that was preceded with a bilateral meeting that we had with Turkey.
But remember, the diplomatic relations were established by Narasimha Rao. I was then director, which was so difficult at that point, because we were breaking out of the corner. This is a logical development.
So Meenakshi is saying, don't take ownership.
No, I'm not.
All I'm
not
saying
about
is,
ownership.
this is a process.
I am slightly different.
May I just add one thing? I don't think it's a logical development, because for too long have we driven our Israel policy by domestic political considerations.
Yeah.
A series of prime ministers. You had a last defense minister who would refuse to receive the Israeli defense minister.
Unfortunately.
What are we talking about? Here's a man who goes to Saudi Arabia, goes to Israel, goes to Iran, and keeps them standalone. That is diplomacy.
No, but that standalone thing, we never even questioned Palestine, for example. Now, Palestine has been voting with Pakistan in courage to ask them that, look, you want our stand clear on certain issues, and on Kashmir you go ahead.
Just one little point. We had a stage when no Israeli defense minister was able to visit India because our defense minister did not want to receive him, and it affected our arms procurements. And in the coming years, Russian uncertainty, the Israelis are going to emerge as a major supplier for Make in India on defense.
Even Russia.
You see, I think, can I just add one sentence here? The sense I get, I don't want to, speak before the experts on this subject, But I get a sense here that Narendra Modi has made a distinction between politics and foreign policy.
Yeah, true.
And that is so you don't look upon some country as a Muslim nation, non-Muslim nation. You have excellent relationships with Saudi Arabia. You exercise influence in Malaysia. You reach out to Southeast Asia, and at the same time you're going to Turkey, you're going to Israel. So I think it's a very different, very practical kind of approach. Pushpesh Pant wanted to come in before I go to the next panel.
No, I think...
I'm sure all is not great with the Modi government. Are there no critics of the Modi government's foreign policy on our panel, Sriram Cholia? I think KC was a qualified critic, provided a qualified critic.
Arnab, you let me come in at this
You should tell us.
I think, Meenakshi ji, both Mr. Parthasarathy and Mr. Singh, I have been a great fan of, as practitioners of Indian diplomacy. To my mind as an analyst, the greatest breakthroughs or positive developments have taken place when they have been almost in charge of either a country or a region and so on. This is a conflict of interest I must put up front. Now the problem is that despite my great appreciation for both of them, I think today both of them are put together an excellent evaluation of Modi's foreign policy. My problem is, I think Arnab was being very modest, saying that I don't want to speak before the expert, but I think he already pointed out the elephant in the room which nobody is watching. What about Russia? What about, Indian foreign policy since independence, post-50s, has been predicated, Bangladesh included, Kashmir vetoes included, space exploration included, nuclear kundakulam, etc. included, basic core sectors of the economy from steel to antibiotics to optics included, was hinged on a special relationship with Russia. Now Putin's Russia has a Eurasian presence directed towards Crimea, Ukraine, not necessarily supportive of India on China, Sakhalin and so on. And then Indians also have to take a call. I have a problem with the other part where Arnab says Southeast Asia is taken care of. It really is not. I was in Bangkok day before yesterday, and half the regret of 2,500,000 Indians in Bangkok city alone was that India doesn't think of us as a country close to them culturally. I would forget about Thailand, no offense meant to Thailand. Take a country like Indonesia. Indonesia has probably the largest Muslim population in the world, and we, for domestic considerations, are so shy of secularism that we would not say, and Indonesian Islam is exactly what the syncretic Islam of India was. The Sufi tradition, it traveled from the ports of India to Malacca to Sumatra, Java, and we have a tradition of Seva Buddhism where the Sultan of Yogyakarta's daughter... No, I'm sorry, Arnab, this needs to be point to be made. If we are equating Saudi Arabia is a great Islamic nation, what about the largest concentration of Muslim population, which we have wasted away our opportunities of collaboration?
Okay, but let's get a comment in from Sriram also.
My view, Arnab, is that Modi has brought about a paradigm change and a massive shift in our foreign policy. I don't agree at all that it is just continuity from previous regimes. That's probably, people who have served in government tend to see it that way. But as an intellectual from outside who's written a book, Modi Doctrine, and who's argued that he is, first of all, given us ambition on the world stage. We were perpetually lacking in drive. We would always be reluctant about wanting to wield power and wanting to acquire power for the benefit of our own people as well as for the larger global good. So I think Modi wants to basically, his term is leading power. How to make India a leading power. That is the biggest contribution at the abstract level. But at a more specific level, if you look at all the sets of policies that he's been adopting in different regions on different issues, they all add up to something which is the coherent policy that was mentioned earlier, which is to make India a leading power. And I think that itself is a big thing. Earlier we were so reluctant about being a superpower. We had this whole downtrodden mentality. But now he's saying we have the solutions to the world's problems and we can be net providers of security and prosperity.
Can I bring our attention to Pakistan very specifically? Because in any discussion of India's foreign policy, pardon my, I'm not obsessed with Pakistan, they're obsessed with us, so we have to respond. But can I just share a number on the screen, please? I think we asked a question.
We asked a specific question.
We asked a very specific...
And a direct question.
I think you want to explain this. On the question we asked on Pakistan, we asked people how they would want to describe the government's policy towards Pakistan.
And we have given them two options, very clear-cut options.
Which were the two options?
And it was like, is it a confused and confounded, or is it tough and straightforward? 48% said that, okay, it's tough and muscular. This is not really going well with the 80% of the ratings, with rest of the things are okay. And look at the numbers which is the other way around, which says that, this government's policy towards Pakistan is actually confused and conflicting, 40%. Now, this is big number. And this is almost at par with yes and no, kind of say. And this doesn't go down well with the 80% ratings
no,
which the government
the reading of this is very, very simple, especially when it comes to Pakistan. 48.3% of the population, according to our survey, believe that the NDA government's approach has been tough and muscular, which means there's a strong approval for a multi-pronged approach of tackling them militarily, isolating them diplomatically. Front-footing has worked. But it also tells you, dil mange more. People want more. 80% of the people feel that you're doing better vis-a-vis the previous government, but only 48% feel that your approach to Pakistan is tough and muscular. How are you going to manage expectations is my question. And Pakistan is
before our panelists go on that, we also asked the people directly and open-ended, which is one thing which you feel this government has let you down on. And people came up with variety of the things. All right. You will be amazed. Number one, of course, we have discussed that they were unable to rein in the fringe elements. Checking the farmers' plight, that came as number two. Number three, surprise. Not enough action against Pakistan. That's on the third top of the mind recall, so that thing which people say. It's tricky. It's a
tricky area, and in actually it's an area where eventually people want to see you deliver. What is delivery vis-a-vis Pakistan?
So delivery in diplomatic understanding is you want peaceful relation at all points in time, because war doesn't help people. Now, war can be, or aggression can be, a tool to achieve peace. But action has to be peace, whether you achieve that diplomatically or you achieve that through aggressive means. And end of the day, when you're handling a complex issue like Pakistan, it is not just India, what Indians feel and what India's response is.
Yeah.
You're dealing with global powers. You're dealing with.
No. You see, your action against Pakistan in recent times, and go specific on this.
I'm specific. Allow me to complete my sentence. So when you are dealing with Pakistan, you can't deal with Pakistan in isolation. You have to deal with regional powers like China. You have to deal with US, who has been funding them throughout, and thankfully this morning's news is that 60% military aid has been cut down, so you have somewhere made a dent. And you're dealing with Saudis, you're dealing with Islamic countries, you're dealing with Iran, you're dealing with Afghanistan. No, I'm coming to that.
Expectations of the people.
Expectations alone and the lack of knowledge on diplomacy cannot drive the policy. The policy has to drive the public opinion. Policy has to drive the public opinion, and there I feel the lack of communication at times could be one reason that we are not able to communicate what exactly is the policy, because every policy will have its diplomatic angle and every policy will have its military angle.
Meenakshi, you're playing safe.
No, I'm not playing safe. I'm wording it the way it is. I'll tell you why
I think you're playing safe. Because, I personally believe that your moving to the ICJ was fantastic. You took that risk. It was not taken before, because it was generally felt if you go to the ICJ on this subject, they'll drag you in on Kashmir. You showed that you were front-footed. Now you've carried out punitive fire assault on Pakistani posts. You have done that before, but now you've released the video. So you're playing, psychological operations vis-a-vis the Pakistanis. Your approach is front-footed. Even the harshest critics will admit that this three-pronged approach, military aggression, diplomatic aggression, and Mr. Parthasarathy, legal aggression, has worked thus far despite no talks. Right? The government has essentially proved their critics wrong by standing by their no talks with terror policy and at the same time giving Pakistan a befitting reply. But there has to be a longer term view of where things are going. In your view, and please speak freely, gentlemen, because Meenakshi should not get away on the program with the comfort of... My question is very simple. I'm not the foreign policy expert. Are they moving event to event, or do they appear to have a longer term policy? That's my question.
Can I
who would like to? Okay, any of you can take that, and then...
Can I add a small question of my own?
Go ahead,
before he answers. You, sir, very, to my mind, rightly pointed out to the axis between Peking and Pakistan, which has gone on ever since '62. There was a Peking-Pindi-Jakarta axis, and the government of India, despite the continuity or the initiatives or taking a quantum paradigm shift, etc., hasn't been able to break this relationship at all. And now I think when Meenakshi says that in the end it's a people-to-people relationship, is there any scope?
Pushpesh, my question is very simple. You have whetted the appetite. Where is this going to go, Mr. Parthasarathy?
One thing. Go on. You are into, I do not agree that there is continuity. There has been substantive change on Pakistan. Mr. Modi started off with reaching out because he didn't want to be seen by the world as a sort of warmonger. Things have reached a stage where the highest American intelligence official, the Director of National Intelligence, testifying to the US Congress 4 days ago, said it has now been very clearly conveyed to us by India that after the Pathankot attack, there are certain paradigm shifts. One, that we will reserve the right to respond at a time and place of our choosing. For the Americans to say that the Indians are now free to move to a policy of responding, they are no longer going to be passive. This is a massive change, and they are not critical of it. That is the important. They're not. And this is the Director of National Intelligence. Yes, we are going to have problems, but the perception, if it changes in the US, is going to change in the NATO allies. But coming back to what Dr. Pant says, the other paradigm change. For too long, Pakistan has got its nuclear weapons, its missiles, its everything from China. We have never in any previous government alluded to this nexus.
Yes.
For the first time we are saying categorically there is a Pakistan-China nexus we will deal with. How we deal with is different matter, but I'd like to add one thing. We are also, I think, making use of the fact, which I don't want to go into further detail, that Pakistan is fighting a three-front war. It's got 82,000 troops deployed on the border with Afghanistan. It is having tensions with Iran, and it has tensions with India. Now, covertly, overtly, whatever, I do not see this government not taking advantage of that, and I'll leave it at that.
No, I have used the phrase of realistic liberalism. That's what we need to our Western neighbor, which is he extended the heartfelt hand of friendship, and it was rebuffed, and therefore he had to recalibrate. So I don't see this as a failure. You know, people often say, what I would say internal security.
But Sriram, I'm not getting an answer to my question. My question is, ask the mood of the country today. You put two events together, and I look upon these as a journalist. On the one side, you have the incident of Kulbhushan Jadhav. Pakistan has wrongly abducted an Indian national as opposition from Iran, falsely framed him and handed him a death penalty. We've gone to the ICJ. They are not even giving us custody. On the other side, both sides are firing on each other. We are bombarding their positions. We are releasing the videos. My question is, where is this going to go eventually? Let's look at a 2-month, 3-month, 4-month situation. Is there a plan? One thing is to use, of course we use foreign policy, but I don't think the Modi government is the only government which has used foreign policy, though I think at the BIMSTEC meeting they raised Pakistan issue, they've used forums. But where is this going to go? Is there a thought out plan vis-a-vis Pakistan? Because we know that China is entering Pakistan, the game changes. How are we going to deal with both sides? And sorry to make this long, Casey, you see the possibility of China and Pakistan coming together?
They have come together.
They have come together.
No, them coming together.
They have more blatantly.
Now that they have come together, then what happens?
Firstly, they're picking up the tab now. In place of the Americans, they're writing out the checks, which Chinese have never blatantly written out. Secondly, they're defying your question mark on Gilgit-Baltistan, and they are giving a damn. When Sakshkam Valley was ceded in 1963 to China by Pakistan, they still in the agreement added, subject to a final settlement of the dispute.
True.
They are saying nothing of the kind about Gilgit-Baltistan. So they're more blatant. Not only vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis the entire periphery. It's a different China we're dealing with. Now, getting to your question, I think the poll is quite understandable. Because what's happening is there has been a flip-flop without explaining to the people why the flip-flop. There may be a strategy which is known to the government, which is in Prime Minister's mind. But if you suddenly invite these 7 SAARC members, and then within weeks of that, suddenly say we are not talking to you, then you again suddenly land up in Lahore. Then because now if you go to Lahore, people around you should have advised you, should have told you that the Pakistani military will retaliate. The minute you reach out to a civilian government from Vajpayee, this is nothing new. The minute you go to Lahore, there will be a Kargil. Now, when you reach out to a civilian government, you must be prepared for retaliation. Then stick to the path. Then don't completely start painting the civilian, the military, everybody in the same corner and say, I will.
So that's the army rules Pakistan
No,
now.
fine,
I mean,
fine.
it's
But then
effectively
why go to Lahore?
That
So
was
I'm
a year
saying
back.
simple. No, I'm saying that is why the public gets confused.
So I think,
The
I
public
think
gets confused.
Meenakshi, point being made here is that the public is confused.
That's right.
You are whetting the appetite, occasionally telling people we're being tough to Pakistan, but clarity is not coming out on what is your long-term Pakistan policy.
See,
You can answer him.
That's exact. I'm not disagreeing with you, and that is why I prefaced my statement by saying a lack of communication, because part of diplomacy and military strategy is.
Stop coming on the television.
You've made me a Lok Sabha member of parliament. I wish you'd given me Rajya Sabha, then I would be more on the television. So when you are answering the people of your constituency, it's a different thing. So similarly, when I'm answering the people of this country, the communication has to be complete, and in that communication we somehow could not communicate that this was part of strategy. How do I expose Pakistan? I have to tell the world that, look, I have been friendly, I have tried my best to have peaceful relationship, and the people are not coming around, and they are using even this opportunity to infiltrate my border, and now my rights are reserved to deal with them on their soil the way it is best dealt with. And that is why surgical strike did not have the kind of reaction from the world that, oh, the outrage. It was like, okay, accept it. India did the right thing.
Just two finger, as they say. Look, the thing is that when the retaliation comes, you have brought the red lines to the boundaries of army camps. That can't be a red line. If you say one single mujahideen firing on an army camp and we are at war with Pakistan, you're giving the control to some damn mujahideen somewhere. The red lines have to be realistic, where you see direct involvement of Pakistani state and government. It can't be a single attack. Otherwise you can never talk. Otherwise then say we will not talk.
Mr. Singh, we will talk when it suits us to talk.
No, fair enough.
We will not talk when we do not wish to talk. Mujahideen is sponsored by the people across the border. We have to expose that. At the same time.
To go back to what you said, we have, I think, to the, at least, and this is where communications, it's not been spelled out to the Indian people. The Director of National Intelligence has said the Indians have made it very clear that at the very least they expect trial of those accused of Pathankot. So I think that still rankles in the mind that he reached out and they hit back. The point is, we have not made it clear to the people of India that we have to be seen to the world. Mr. Modi has to be seen by the world, not as a warmonger, but as someone who's willing to reach out. He reached out, and he's taken care of. But the important, as I said, the other thing which the Director of National Intelligence had made it very clear, that apart from the going back to Pathankot, that we would hit them at our choice.
That's right.
That's exactly 48% approving, only approving PM's handling of Pakistan. You know, what does the public want, you ask? The public has expectation that ultimately there will be total end to cross-border terrorism. Ultimately that there will be no more claims on our undisputable sovereignty or Kashmir. Ultimately that this country will bow to the reality that we are a much superior and morally grounded country, and that they will stop bothering us. But I think that all these cannot be achieved in 3 years. What has been achieved, I think, is he has sent the message. It's a kind of peace through strength argument.
I want to go on the China issue a little bit more in detail, because I think earlier we were dealing with Pakistan, and now we are dealing, as the gentleman have rightly pointed out, we are dealing with Pak-China.
That's right.
Now,
always dealing with China. It's more blatant now.
It's more blatant.
It's more blatant.
It's more blatant. I want to put some more part of the survey.
Some more part of it. And this survey is altogether different from the tracker.
No, go ahead.
There is a survey which we carry along with the Gallup International, which is basically on the on the reputation and feel-good factor towards the nations, the brands of the nations at large. You know, how favorable are you and how favorable you are not. And it is carried around hundreds of countries, and they map along with us about 20 major countries, good and bad as they call it. Now, over the years, it has always been confused on that thing. In Pakistan data, I mean, that means when you ask the people of Pakistan, of all the countries, the one country they hate to the core is India. It has been a constant. To my surprise, even in China, of all the countries they hate to the core, India is among the bottom. There is no goodwill whatsoever among the Chinese people at large for India. I mean, let's be very honest and very clear about it. Problem is that people don't look into these data sets.
Not the views of the people would matter in China.
And because Mr. Parthasarathy did mention about the local politics and local policies by influencing the Palestinian cause, like that.
It influenced China also.
So exactly. To couple it, the Indian public, when you ask about to the Indian public, believe me, all the countries that Indians in their own perception consider least favorable are the countries we have been always offering an olive branch and always going after.
One area I want to add here, not to provoke it, but I think Modi has been able to show his straightforwardness, has been China. Because in the last 3 years, relations with China have been hot and cold. They're always hot and cold. Now you know India's attempt to get a UN ban on Masood Azhar, China vetoed it, right? It was an obstacle to India's getting into the NSG. Membership, it still is.
2 days ago.
And on the other hand, they invite India to attend this Belt and Road Forum. The story here, which is good about the Modi government, it holds ground. India rejected China's invitation to attend that Belt and Road Forum in Beijing because of China's canoodling with Pakistan, because of Masood Azhar. It's a strong message to Beijing.
So, because of Gilgit-Baltistan and the sovereignty issue.
Sure, but the bottom line is we must concede Narendra Modi's diplomatic ability to snub the Chinese.
I want to say one. I go a step further than you.
Moral courage.
Leave all that aside. He made the official spokesman say that the OBR is a bad project. That it has driven countries like Sri Lanka bankrupt. And what is he finding? Within we see much criticism in India by our bleeding hearts. What
by
is
the bleeding, absolutely. He snubbed the OBR project.
The United Nations and rating agencies have said this project is a dud.
But Mr. Parthasarathy, can I give a different spin to it? One sentence.
Moody's have downgraded China.
But can I do one sentence? See, here is a person, and I hope we are not sounding too congratulatory of Modi on foreign policy, but the man has done a few things that must be conceded. His expertise is not seen to be foreign policy before he comes in, right? He has no direct experience of handling diplomacy. But in an extension of what you're saying, while he snubs the OBOR project invitation,
and the world follows suit,
he also ensures that China becomes the fastest growing sources of foreign direct investment into India. Even his strongest critics will grant
just one more bit of data. China has found that it's had to write off about $200 billion of foreign investment made and not repaid.
So this is a very
India is a better bet for them in terms of ROI.
So you concede, Casey, that this is a different kind of foreign policy. It's front-footed and yet at the same time does not give.
I told you we are at inflection point.
It's a take no prisoners.
I'm breaking it up into two parts. We were discussing the last 3 years, not the next 2 years. So we are at an inflection point. I was telling you over the last 3 years, the work he's put in, he'll have to have different stances now. Because you have a more assertive China. So fine, you are responding to it. There'll be countermeasures from China. They are not going to sit back. There will be countermeasures. You don't have the same solace of having America constantly in your corner. You may not have the same solace saying Pakistan's going down the tube. These are all now, and this is what diplomacy is.
We had, by the way, it's not
strategies.
all good. One of the questions we asked was, what has been the BJP government's biggest U-turn? And on that, you want to share the data?
And one of the biggest U-turn that have been shared is like people on the top of the mind recall have been saying that no tough stand on the Pakistani terrorism and the separatists. This is the number 2 top of the mind recall. So,
But
and
number
that
one is
includes the Kashmir. I mean, this is an overlapping thing.
But
Pakistan
number one
and
was
the
also
Kashmir
not bringing back
separatists,
foreign black money.
and not bringing back foreign black money.
33% said
Yeah,
that.
but
See, these are all dependent on, Meenakshi was saying they are dependent on multilateral processes. Modi was the one who secured a major victory for the G20, one of the world's largest, most decisive bodies on the black money issue. And frankly, for these processes to happen, it requires intergovernmental coordination and involvement of financial, agencies and investigators. So it's not a simple thing where you say,
maybe in that case, I would agree with Meenakshi on one thing, that on certain areas and certain issues there has been
he has set the bar so high, people have such high expectations.
People have high expectations, and
but you have to give him time.
And very clear-cut expectation on certain things, that no nonsense on the separatists, no nonsense
With
on the
China, Pakistan coming together, the one question on everyone's mind is, how will we do the balancing act between America and Russia? We have to be able to balance.
And because you mentioned...
And Arun Jaitley, I think, traveled to the US last month, and then he went to Russia to discuss military ties. You have to maintain strong diplomatic and military relations.
Because you mentioned America and Russia both.
Can I get Casey on this?
Because I will just give you a data, Casey, so that you can, I can get your decision on that. When I mentioned the country survey, one country which is losing the respect of the Indians constantly over the last few years is Russia, number one. One country which is gaining further popular support in spite and despite of Trump being elected or not is US. So as far as the public perception or popular sentiment is concerned, the Russian favorability among the Indians is going down. It's nosediving by the day.
No.
Less and less people are favoring Russia. I'm talking about public perception.
Okay, once. Let me get Casey in on this, please. My question was, how will we balance America and Russia? Is it possible to do that, given our strategic?
Arnab, it's not just America and Russia, it's also China, because the Russians have converged with China, though they have differences.
Sure.
So some of the new issues we can raise is, Russians don't want the one belt, one road to become completely a Chinese game. They have a north-south corridor that they've been talking about 15 years, which runs through Iran. So some of these things will have to be discussed. But Russians, our grouse has been, they've been overcharging, delaying the weapon system that we have bought, building up the bills on them. Their grouse is that they are not the only ones that we buy from. We used to go to the French, now we're going to the Americans. So they don't have a single vendor kind of advantage, which we used to have for decades. Now you'll have to, and there's very little other trade with Russia. Essentially your trade was oil and gas and weapon systems. Other things have not been there. So you have to see how to bring Russia back.
Why I was asking that question, Casey, was in a different context. We always say, as he said, we want to be a superpower. As we aim to be a superpower, we'll have to move beyond the region. And we'll have to play part of the global game. You can't be equal to all. You are very well aware, Partha, of the relationship between Trump and Putin has not been that good. You have Syria, Ukraine, Moscow's interference, so-called in the 2016 election, Trump's own perceptions in the US. In that situation, how will we play the balancing act?
I want to say one thing. One advantage which we have with Trump. Trump is more keen than even we are to make peace with Russia, despite domestic opposition. I think the time has come, as Casey has said, that we also start looking back at Russia at strategic terms.
Yes.
It is our access to Eurasia.
Can there be a Modi, Putin, Trump action?
You have leaked reports.
Can there be?
You have leaked reports that you are cancelling contracts for Russian nuclear power plants. It's a ridiculous thing to do.
No, but can there be? Meenakshi Lekhi.
No, but there are leaked
Can there
reports.
be in tomorrow's world, similar personalities, very, very popular leaders, all seem to be a little right of center. Can there be a collaboration between Modi, Putin and Trump? If you see this as a reality, first as a personal...
We should try to work for it.
We should try to work for it, says Partha. Meenakshi, I'll come just
we have a Russia, India, China. There's a RIC.
No,
But that's not good enough now.
No, which is an Asian thing. But you have to see the convergence.
Can there be an MPT, Modi, Putin, Trump?
Can I?
Please.
See, I would say let's keep Trump aside, because US will have its own policy, whether it's Saudis or it's Middle East or whatever. We have to interact with Russia on two counts, and we must learn our lessons from what China has done, because the economy of Russia is about the size of Italy. But in social terms, it's a civilization which is much respected and has huge deal of manpower training and human resource, and has top-of-the-line technological systems. Israel has used some of the best brains from Russia for developing their own intelligence and war systems, and Russian technology, because they don't have money. Chinese have been giving them paychecks over a period of time and buying technology from them and building their own Make in China programs. Why should a friend of India, who has been long-standing friend and comparatively a dependable friend, be not trusted and Make in India campaign be taken forward through Russia rather than any other place? For the simple reason, the technological transfer and the money we can have from them, which is much cheaper.
Arnav, there's another triangle, which is Russia, Iran and India.
That's right.
Because Iran and Russia are so closely intertwined in the Syrian conflict. I think we can come together and try and change the game.
Arnav, you can have infinite number of intersecting triangles. You will end up with a Sri Yantra in the end. But the whole point is that the government of India will have to take a call. I'm one with Bharat Karnad on this one. The principal contradiction and adversity in Asia is between China and India. We still retain a hangover of the Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai days, and let's not overread the Russian overlap of interest, because when Soviet Union was there was an ideological affinity. With the breakdown of Soviet Union, the convergence of national interests do no longer exist. Putin looks eastwards, personality type similar to Modi's, but not necessarily the same concerns. So India has...
Can there be a flashpoint with Pakistan? You know, are things now anywhere on the brink, or are we overeating the situation? Partha and Kesh.
I think both sides really would like to have a controlled escalation, if I may call it.
Yes.
Whether that works, whether that doesn't work,
depends.
Huh?
Can that always be
absolutely. You can have, listen. I can tell you, you can have very graduated and measured escalation. Let's see how the other side reacts.
But you can't predict the other side. Kesh.
Well, if you can't predict them, you're going to predict nobody.
Evening after evening, we hear the BJP spokesman running down Pakistan saying their military is wearing bangles, they're no good, we beat them up.
That's wrong.
This is not healthy.
No.
It is a well-equipped army. It is an army which has fighting experience behind it and Chinese muscle.
Meenakshi.
No, it doesn't mean that.
It
doesn't mean they can overpower us, but they can certainly be a pain in the neck.
Are you only playing to the gallery?
We should not escalate. We should not have stereotypes. There's no such thing. It's an army with fighting experience. We deter them, but let's not overdo it.
Yeah, measured escalation is what
I would agree with Mr. Singh on two counts, that when it is about foreign policy and when it's about military strategy, I think TV studios are not the places where you discuss all that, except communicate in certain terms what you want the message to go to the public at large. These discussions are restricted to some conference room in South Block or North Block, and let's keep it like that. And one thing I wanted to make very clear, that you know, stone pelting incident of Kashmir, which keeps coming back to haunt me, and I've said this even this morning on Homeland Security, a girl child with a basketball in her hand, and that has become the image of India. Now 10-20 people to arrange them to throw stones or to shout slogans happens even in US universities on daily basis. They may not be throwing stones, but they are chaos in those universities, but that doesn't get exhibited through their social media or mainstream media platforms, and so magnifying images do not go to people. And unfortunately in India, there is a different image which goes out.
Meenakshi Lekhi, I'll say this at the very end, you know, at the end of the day, you shoot the messenger.
No, I'm not shooting the messenger.
The point is, I would only, I think this has been a very...
You must understand
this
the
has been a very useful discussion. First of all, I would like to congratulate your party and your government for the great approval ratings that you've got. I mean, for the gentleman in the room who followed approval ratings in the US, this is fantastic, you know. If Trump had half of this, he would be a very happy man. The problem is, the fact is that you have to now look at the long term. What the experts are saying to you is that this is only well started. It's a job well done only when you complete it. Now you're going to play the great game. What people will watch is how much of your foreign policy is Pakistan dependent and how much goes beyond into the region and beyond. Meenakshi Lekhi, I thank you very much. Yashwant, thank you very much. Partha, thank you Casey, Pushpesh Pant and Sriram for joining me. And thanks very much for joining me on this episode of the Approval Ratings. Thank you.
Our army and our defense forces are in a state of readiness. They will not permit any form of infiltration to take place as far as our borders are concerned. We are in absolutely safe hands. That's my message as far as India is concerned. And the consequential message from this, that these kind of excesses which are committed on our border against our armed forces will not go in vain. Our armed forces will take whatever appropriate actions in these matters are concerned.
Have Achhe Din arrived in 3 years?
38.1% of the people feel that Achhe Din have arrived, but 44% people feel they have not yet arrived, but they are hopeful.
Has the fringe run ended under Modi?
23% of people feel that the government should do much more to rein in the fringe elements.
Majority of the Indians, by the way, say that they are taking the focus away from the original development plan for which this government was mandated.
Find out. National Approval Ratings. Special coverage with Ornov. Today on Republic TV.